not plugged into a surge protector. Everything else is saved though.
Good.
It is a good reminder, because like with laptops, you just, plug them in all over the house or whatever.
Totally, because they have a built-in like surge protector.
I'm feeling so warm.
Brand new laptop.
Baby. Yours?
Been working on it all day to get it ready.
Is it heavy like
Well,
Gloria's?
it's really nice, but my other one I had since 2015
Ouch.
and finally I cracked, so it wasn't working.
Got my computer back today. I'm feeling really thankful.
Technology.
It's a big deal to move
It's-
over.
I don't like
Big
it.
deal.
I don't like it.
And all your files and
It's
saving stuff and,
I suppose because it's cold in here. The courthouse.
feedback.
Oh,
That was good.
all right. I guess we could go ahead and start and they can join us when they get here. Is that okay, Sally?
Sure. Yep.
All right.
All right. So it is 5:35 and we will start the work session to review the Shrine Hill constraints analysis. And I guess we'll do a roll call.
Trustee Davis. Here's Dr. Rojas, yes. Trustee Cramer.
Here.
Trustee Harper. Here. Trustee Bierman.
Yep, he's here, he's online.
Trustee George. Right. Mayor Pro Tem Barney
Here.
and Mayor Kerman. Is not.
And he's absent. So, yep, we can just note that Tyler is now here and go ahead and get started with Lucy.
Great. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction. So the Shrine Hill constraints analysis is the first step to creating a sub area plan for Shrine Hill. And this is identified in our master plan. The trustees requested a constraints analysis while evaluating 2 applications in the area back in November, with today as the deadline. So CPS has met their deadline and the constraints were identified by looking at the current conditions that exist within our code and ownership. This is not a sub area plan, and community planning strategies have met. Oh, oops. All right. I'll let CPS take over and walk you through this.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to get the PowerPoint to present on the correct screen. So bear with me for just another minute. Maybe I can. Maybe I can get this. Maybe not. Well, is this clear enough, or do we need to do a full screen?
It might depend on what we're looking at, but for now, that seems adequate to me. And I know we have it in our packets.
Okay. Well, I can see here. Yeah, because now you're seeing, you're seeing, I can't switch the screens for some reason. Display settings. There we go. Oh, there we go.
Nice.
That it? Ooh, look at that. Can teach an
That's
old
great.
dog new tricks. All right. So thank you for that intro, Gloria. And so what we're going to run through tonight is real kind of quickly is the Shrine Hill constraints analysis. As discussed, this is not the sub area plan as contemplated in the master plan, but we thought that given everything all the dialogue and discussions that have been going on in the last few months, this would be a good opportunity to take it to the next step, to understand what's going on and how to, what the future of Shrine Hill area could look like. So jump in that these are kind of the purpose statements of when we talked about doing this. These are what we looked at. First, as mentioned, the Compass Master Plan does suggest or state that a sub-area plan should be done for this area. Sub-area plan is a lot more specific, but this is the first step in doing that. Next, it was going to be important to identify the area of Shrine Hill. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but that was part of what we needed to do as well. And we'll give you the reasons why we chose, defined it as we did. The existing conditions and development constraints, I want to talk about those kind of in conjunction, that we did not, through this assessment, do any detailed analysis or evaluation, really. It's took existing conditions and identified whether or not they would be constraints to development and how they would. So for example, steep slopes, that has a constraint on development one way or another. So we just tried to identify those and little by little whittled away at different areas and the impacts that those would have on development in the Shrine Hill area. And you'll see a lot more through the maps for that. And I'm assuming that you've all seen that as well. So I guess maybe that's a good just point of order or point of logistics, that I'll make the assumption at this time that you all have at least looked through the constraints analysis, that report, and we can certainly come back to things, but just in the interest of time, I'll make that assumption. So please, if I'm wrong, stop me at some point. I would prefer, just because the slides build on each other, that we wait till the very end and then we can kind of come back, because they each kind of build on each other to develop the conclusion map. So again, we're looking at only the existing conditions and what might be a constraint or opportunity to development in this area. This is the Compass Master Plan area that identifies the Shrine Hill sub-area plan. And I assume you might be able to see my cursor, but this yellow area is what we were started with as far as our subject area. From there, we refined it slightly, just simply because now we had some real world examples or real world tasks that we were trying to tackle. So what we ended up doing, and it'll become more evident in some of the future slides here, but we wanted to look at not just the area itself, right? So the area within town that is specifically Shrine Hill proper, if you will, but also look at access points to it, from it, and other areas that would impact it. So it's not just the area, but for example, the steep slopes come into it. So we might need to look a little bit more broad than just if we took a narrow focus on say, just, this like 12 block area, we might miss some opportunities or constraints in the overall. So we took a little bit broader brush. Does that make some sense just at a general level? I think I heard there might be some questions about why this area. So hopefully that helped. Okay, so then we threw some characteristics of the area together. One, it's about 194 acres is what we were looking at. 134 plus or minus are within town limits. So yes, there are some that are outside of town limits, and we can get those are constraints. It's originally platted as the original township, which is great to have a grid pattern, but when you try to put a flat grid on a steep slope, you have inherent constraints. So, and then there are 211 parcels within the area. That ranges from things that are currently developed, no issues per se, all the way to some others. So it's just all within this area. 211 parcels, 202 of which are in town, and 9 parcels are owned by the town. So that at least is a positive there. I'm sorry, 9 parcels that are in unincorporated San Juan County. I thought there were 9 that were owned by you all too, but I'll get to that in a minute. So then we get into these maps, and again, there's really no deep scientific method to these. You know, what the methodology of this was, Brad Potter from our office, who you guys have at least met virtually a couple of times, Katie, and myself just kind of scratched our heads and say, okay, what do we have? What data do we have available? What information do we know? And how can we start compiling this information into some type of illustrations to show, to start identifying how development could occur up here or be limited. So the first is we had to establish what a parcel was, and that's different than a lot. And we did this because lots, as I believe all know, lots cannot be developed individually based on zoning requirements. They're just not the right size. And so there's some compilation that's needed. So the county, though, has assessed tax records. And so what we did is we combined lots based on the county's tax record. So essentially, if one person is paying tax on one piece of land, that's what we looked at, because that piece of land is owned by one person and may be buildable. Okay, and we didn't get into that level of detail, but at least now we're talking about ownership as opposed to platted lots. So when we talk through this whole process about parcel, that's what we're referring to. So in this area, 165 different owners. I'm sure that's not a huge surprise for any of you, but that is we now have a tangible number of the people that we need to talk to in order to make changes or development or implications up here. There you go. 9 parcels are owned by the town. 138 of the parcels are vacant right now. So that leaves a great amount of opportunity. We'll see later where those parcels are does matter. 63 of the parcels are already built on and improved. And I just want to be clear that we're not changing or suggesting that any existing entitlements, existing buildings should be changed. Again, this is just an existing conditions assessment showing what's there and what opportunity and constraints there are in the future. This was a little bit of an odd stretch, if you will, but this last little by the numbers is approximately 19 parcels are impacted by the dirt road, County Road 6 that runs along here. And the reason we thought that was important is that if that road were to become a formal road in its current alignment, there's at least 19 property owners that would have to be negotiated with, if you will, or met with and discussed about.
TJ, real quick before
Sure.
we move on, by improved, you mean like there's a water line that reaches the property or a sewer or?
No, actually, I mean, there's a structure on it. So essentially a home. And I'll clarify. Yeah, that we did all of this with, we've been there, we've seen it, but we've done all of these counts by aerial photography. So they may be off a little bit, but if we're looking at a Google map and seeing a structure and seeing a water line and a sewer line next to it, we're assuming that that's a home or a tangible improved lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And that's a really good point, Sally. Thanks. That if you see anything in here like, no, that's wrong, it's very simple just to go in and change the numbers. So by all means, we'd love for this to be as accurate as possible. So if you do see something, please let us know. So on this one, again, pretty basic map, the zoning map. This is just showing that a vast majority of the properties in this area are 1A. And this is a positive, we thought, simply because it's a little bit larger lot requirements, but also, we don't have commercial or industrial uses up here that would require additional improvements and infrastructure to get to them. So as far as level of impact, your larger lot, single family homes are the lowest we can get. So that at least is some positive.
And JJ, could you mention for the record too, that R1A also does not allow new vacation rental permits, correct?
Katie?
That is correct. Yeah.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was up as of a month or two ago. We know that for sure.
Yeah, just clarifying for the public.
Excellent, thank you. So then we get into utilities and infrastructure, and this is the water line. So the blue lines in here, the darker blue, if you will, the royal blue, are all the existing water lines. This blue line that we're calling the blue line, it's the contour line that is at 9,415 foot elevation. Where that comes from is in discussion, and I want to make sure I'm using this term correctly. That I saw John in the room there, but the system is currently gravity pressure fed, essentially through pressure and gravity. So the blue line, as we call it, is the line at which water cannot be served above simply by the current design of the system. It can be built, it can be served above there, but it requires additional pump stations or booster stations. I don't know the exact terminology. But again, it's just one of those limits that given your current infrastructure, water infrastructure improvements, that blue line, that contour at 9,415 feet is a constraint. With that being said, there are currently 75 parcels that are adjacent to water lines, and that's assuming that we did not confirm that means 75 taps and services, but that means that 75 lots can currently be served with the infrastructure as is. 66 of the lots, parcels, in the subject area are above the blue line, and therefore additional infrastructure improvements would be required in order to serve them with water. The other side of that coin would be that if public waters were not being provided, well would have to be. And again, that's a whole different dynamic. It's an opportunity or another opportunity for development, if you will, but one of those options. Maybe it's more of an option, not an opportunity. And then the last bullet there by the numbers, 70 parcels are below the blue line, but not adjacent to water line, the current water line. So that means that in theory, the water line and water system could be expanded to serve those lots or parcels, but that would require some additional planning, engineering, design, and infrastructure improvements, construction. So very similarly, we did the same analysis on the sewer line. The difference being on this side that since it's a gravity system, there is no elevation, it will flow downhill more easily. Now with that, it does have a limit, and you have to do what's called drop manholes to make sure that it's not too steep. So there's additional infrastructure and improvements needed for that, but in theory, they're all serviceable. The other side of that coin is if properties are not served by the public sewer system, they can be served by the on-site wastewater treatment system, OWTS. I don't know exactly how that fits into the town. I suspect that the town doesn't actually allow them, but that was something that is an opportunity or option moving forward too. And so from the sewer standpoint, 67 of the parcels of the 211 parcels are adjacent to an existing water line. Sewer line. Sewer line. So again, not a whole lot of the area is currently served by utilities. This is probably a little bit harder one to grasp But what we tried to do here is identify where the potential access points from a roadway standpoint, this area, the subject area, could be accessed to the current infrastructure in and around town. And so we've identified 4 of them, one being at 8th and Snowden, another at County Road 6 and Highway 550. That's out on the CDOT highway. That comes with an additional element that requires CDOT approvals and therefore most likely a access permit. The number 3 is the County Road 6 and 15th Street. That's where I guess Shrine Hill Road currently goes up to the cemetery and the water tank. Actually, that's not the water tank. And back around. And then the 4th being at 10th Street, connecting to town that way. That has a little bit of another constraint in that it is very steep, and we'll see in a little bit steepness. And then the arrows on this are, so the stars are where the existing infrastructure connection points are. The arrows are how they could connect to this specific area of the Shrine Hill. So again, the conclusion here is that there are options for connections. And I know one of, I don't remember exactly who it was, mentioned that there was a little bit of a nervous feeling that if we approved something, we would be pigeonholing ourselves into a specific access point or prohibiting future accesses. So I think that this gives you at least an idea of there are opportunities for access points to and through the subject area, albeit there are constraints and costs tied to any improvement up here. So, and this is this seems just really kind of odd, but if you think about it and digest it for a minute, what we're trying to show here is that it's obviously on a hillside, but we're looking at roadway grades compared to the town standards. So currently the town standards, a local road is allowed a maximum of 8% grade. Collector is 7 and arterial is 5. However, historically, the town currently has allowed, or I should say historically has allowed, up to 12% grade on different roads. And that makes a lot of sense in a mountain community. So what this is showing, though, is that essentially this yellow, anything this yellow and darker doesn't meet town standards for road grade. Now, this doesn't get into, a lot of different things. And again, this is just existing conditions. What's that mean? What that really means is that in order to do any roadways to meet standards, whether it's I'm driving up or even the side to side, right, to meet the crowning of a road and whatnot, there is going to be a significant amount of cut and fill required. So that adds costs, that adds pushing it into private property potentially, depending on how you grade that out. So again, we don't know exactly what those are, but this at least will give you an idea of, okay, these are compared to our standards, these are steep. And again, I think just looking at this, going as you're looking at it right to left, kind of across, is going to be a lot simpler because you're traveling with the contour, so you can meet that a little bit easier. But again, that's going to require cut fill. It's going to be a lot more difficult if you're looking at it going up and down, right? Because you're not going to be able to meet the slopes going up or down, and it's going to be a lot harder to try to flatten that out as you climb higher. So again, just understanding how the slopes meet the current standards or don't. now that was existing. That was what's out there today. That was a LiDAR data that we pulled that's available. This is the town's slope hazard overlay. As we're moving into some of the overlays in the town's hazard areas, I also want to be cautious that these came from our team digitizing some maps that were quite difficult to read, but also confirming and going back and forth a few times with staff. So we're pretty comfortable on it, but also know that these are digitized maps of existing standards and regulations that are on the books today. So this hash that you can see is the steep slope. What that means is it's 25% or greater. And that's important. And I don't know if you've heard this or not from the development community, but typically 30% is the new norm, if you will, for what's considered steep, especially in mountainous terrain. So maybe it's a little less, but still, there's good reasons for 25, good reasons for whatever. But again, I just wanted to show that as in context. So these are the areas that are 25% slope or greater that would limit development even further in here. And there are 77 lots or parcels, excuse me, that are impacted by the steep slope hazard overlay. So this is the same map that I was just showing you for the roadway grades, but at a broader scale. So this is the whole area, and you can see again, it gets quite steep quite quickly. Now, again, by the numbers, just to, again, you look at this and what does that mean in development terms and in code terms. So 12%, which again is somewhere in this yellow area, is your maximum road grade that you've allowed. 25%, which is generally in this the lighter orange, is the 25%. So that's where you start getting into steep slopes, and it gets quite expensive. It's still possible to develop, but much more expensive. And then as you know, this 57.7% and over is avalanche terrain. So that's 30 degrees. And so, you know, as you start seeing that, and you can kind of see even to the further up the hillside, it's quite significant. So again, I think I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but you know, this is right in some avalanche terrain, and there's some mitigation or at least impacts there. So we'll get to that in a minute. So those are the numbers that I just wanted to show in context. So yeah, it's a pretty map, pretty pictures. You can kind of see the shading and everything, but at least now with some of those numbers, it might make a little bit more sense in real world. So speaking of avalanche, here is the avalanche hazard overlay. Now, I'll also, you know, give a plug that we did not compare this to the slopes, right? So we looked at each of these individually and said, okay, here it is. So we never analyzed this for applicability, if you will. We just assumed, we took the approach that this was the overlay and the hazard, and we went with that. So as most of you, I'm hoping know, there's a blue and a red area or zones. The blue area is broken down into 3 different categories, and they all have to do with the amount of pressure or load, if you will, that potential avalanches would have on structures. And I suspect that the reason for that is less of a health and safety component, more so from a building structural requirement. If you're within this area, you have to build to these loads, much like a roof load. So again, I don't know exactly if that's the where it all came from, but I found that kind of interesting as we were going through this exercise, how that's tied to loads as opposed to you know, the slope and the hazard. So then by the number, 28 parcels are in the red zones, and 67 are in the blue. This one was we were debating on whether we should include this one or not, because it tells actually a good story right now that there's very little wildfire risk in this area. However, what we wanted to make sure of is that as you add more fuel to this area, the risk potentially goes up. And I think we all just want to be really cautious and cognizant of wildfire risk in our mountain communities. So yes, while right now it tells a pretty good story, I suspect that it's because there's very little fuel. And if you add fuel without trying to mitigate the potential negative impacts on fire, it could turn into less, or sorry, a higher risk in this area. This one, again, it doesn't really impact the area that we were looking at. I don't think that it's, but we always want to look at floods, especially since there are two streams that converge in the area. We always want to make sure we're looking at it. So on this particular case, we have both the FEMA 100-year and 500-year floodplain, as well as the town's floodplain overlay. So you can see it doesn't really impact this area that we're looking at, the subject area, but it is important to keep in mind. And then, of course, the caveat down bottom that this is the, I guess I can still call it, I think, Lucy, the current floodplain data that has not been updated yet, but I guess in a couple of days, maybe next week, it'll be updated in March. So with all of that, we identified opportunities and constraints. So first, roadway design. I'm not going to really go through all of these in detail because I kind of did, right? So the steep slopes will impact I'm sorry, these are opportunities. Some of the roadways were already designed by a private developer. SGM did it, I believe, in late last year. Some of them do, some of them do not meet town standards, but at least some of those are already thought through with a grading plan tied to them. Zoning, again, largely residential. That's a positive, I think, or maybe a better opportunity than if it were commercial. And then access. Access has its own constraints, but at least there are multiple opportunities. Then moving on to constraints, there's a ton of property owners up here. So what that means is that people purchase property with the expectations to be able to develop to some level. And so that means that there's 165 different property owners. That does mean that some property owners own multiple parcels. So that could be positive, and there might be some great opportunity in taking some larger areas, but still 165 property owners. Public improvements would be difficult simply because of the slope. Either you have to switch back up and down or go with a contour. It'd be difficult to go up, but of course, everything and anything can be engineered if the right price is there. And kind of the bottom line and the foundation to all of this stuff is steep slopes. Yes, the town has a standard of steep slope at 25%, but there's a lot of areas that are within that, but even those that are not designated as steep slope area, you still have a hillside that is still going to cost more money to develop than a flat area. Utilities, kind of just talked about that, public infrastructure improvements, the avalanche overlay. There are significant impacts with the existing avalanche overlay. Wetlands, you notice we didn't put any in there because there aren't any formally adopted, but we do, of course, want to make sure that there's an opportunity through development to identify, evaluate, and mitigate those where possible. Floodplain, again, not a huge impact to this area, but a consideration nonetheless. And then lastly, access. There are access points. That is great for a lot of different reasons, but each of them come with their own difficulties. So ready? Drum roll. What we're calling the conclusion map. Not that this necessarily tells the whole story, but I think what we tried to do is roll it all up into one map that the best we can tells the story. So the darker green are what's currently improved. And what's currently improved is 30% of the lots. That's 63 of the parcels. Vacant, but infrastructure available. And this means that there's not a building, I guess you could say, right? We didn't visually see a structure on it from the aerial photography, but we do have, based on the infrastructure maps, water and sewer accessible or adjacent to that property. And that is only 7 lots, parcels, that's 3%. The planned developments or planned improvements, and you can see on this the black dotted lines kind of running through, serpentining around. Those are the alignments that SGM had provided some preliminary analysis or design on, and so we thought that warranted at least a little bit different scenario, simply because some of the heavy lifting was already done. And so we created a category that with those planned improvements, how many properties would be updated, and that's only 7%, so 15 parcels. And then another 5% or 11 parcels would require future planning and design. And so that's kind of the one side of the coin, if you will. The other side of the coin, which is how many parcels are impacted by one or more hazards, that's 55% or 115 parcels, and that's all the reds. Now, again, just the caveat that we did not analyze those areas, right? A lot of those, frankly, are in the blue avalanche areas, steep slopes. So if it was impacted by any of those, we categorized the whole parcel as being impacted. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there's 115 parcels that cannot be built on, but at least it adds that extra level of scrutiny or review or evaluation. So that's what it really comes down to, that 55% of the properties in here in this sub area are limited by one hazard or more, and 45%, or I guess it's only 15% really, have potential to be built on today, if you will, by looking at the constraints. While 30%, the remaining 30% is currently built on. So that's all that I had. That I think I went through that pretty quickly. Hopefully it didn't all get lost, but I'd be happy to go back to any slides or questions that you all have.
Thank you so much.
Super quick question. On the buildable with planned improvements, when you refer to the planned improvements, that is essentially the hashed streets that SJM proposed being completed. Is that right?
That is correct. And a little bit of full disclosure on that when we got that information, we were under the impression that SGM did those for the town. A few weeks ago, we learned that those were designed for actually private properties. So a little bit of private property owners. So a little caveat there that those might not be the correct alignments, the desired alignments, but at least some analysis has been done.
Okay, great. So there's not any other planned improvements that you were referring to. It was just those.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
TJ, do we need to see your screen still, or can we go back to, is that okay with everybody in the room? Okay.
I can very easily pull another map up or slide up if needed.
Awesome. Okay, well, we have about 15 minutes and we started a little bit late. So, Gloria, it sounds like we have a little bit of time for questions or discussion. Is that, sound good to you?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Questions, anyone? Comments?
That's good.
I wanted to thank staff in this room and on the screen for the amount of work. This is a huge first step to give us all something to react to in one place with all of our existing overlay districts and considerations. So thank you guys very much for putting this together.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well and kind of say that I think that some of what the board has had to sort of read and analyze in the past few months regarding the Shrine Hill development really took us in the direction of trying to understand and research wetlands. And I think that's been really rigorous and really helpful, and hopefully kicking off a great opportunity to create some policies around wetlands in the community that that we're all on board with and that makes sense for us. And I think this is sort of on a different track, doing the same thing for addressing some of the development concerns and desires for the Shrine Hill. And so this was a really big chunk to bite off. And I think that this document, I know that it just brings up a lot probably, and I'm sure the community has a lot of questions, but I think it's an important first step in transparency. I think this is a really important sort of house of information, and for the town to have collected it and then be able to just know what we have, like know what we're looking at. I know, I'll speak personally, we built a house about 5 years ago, and just doing our due diligence on whether or not to purchase the piece of property, let alone dig a hole in the ground, was hours and hours of research and just mystery after mystery and like plenty of confusion to go around. And so I think like this is just a really important first step in being just being open with the community and transparent about what we see and taking that data and just housing it in a really helpful place. So I know it's definitely not the end goal, but I really appreciate the start. I appreciate the start.
You got to start biting the elephant somewhere.
Yeah, and then we can know what we're talking about. And if something's incorrect, we can at least point to something and say, we don't think that works, or that sewer line doesn't go there, or it goes here. But yeah, I think it's a great start. Anything else?
I was just going to add, Sally, you brought up like transparency and accountability and all that. I think this is really helpful in that regard. And I think it is useful for the community to be apprised of what we're talking about when we're talking about the Shrine Hill area, at least as a starting point, and that this document is not anything new, right? We're not proposing any new policy here or any new overlay. It's what already exists. And in the spirit of full disclosure, just noting that Sally, myself, and Shane all have property on this hillside. And so as we go forward, making sure that that is incredibly transparent in how we have the discussions. Because again, none of this is new, none of this affects our existing property, but knowing that Sally and I are homeowners and Shane has property here, just so we're all, and the public is all very clear in how we're talking about it and how we're approaching any future changes.
Yeah, great.
And for our colleagues to be.
Jordan, Jim, did Jeff get there yet? I just want to, I'm not sure. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got nothing further to add to that. It's a really good, just thanks TJ for just presenting all that information. Gives us a really good starting point.
TJ, can you clarify, or Katie, on like with the matching colors, each color is a separate property owner, right? But like if there are matching colors, even if they're not contiguous, that is the same property owner.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Now, granted, it's very hard to come up with 165 colors, distinguishable colors. So,
Yeah.
but at least you can get the magnitude.
That's right. And the San Juan County Assessor's website is very helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, and what we can do with our software as the town decides to move forward with any steps is basically pull all that property ownership into an Excel sheet. So you can get owner names, mailing addresses, all of that. So it's all behind the scenes in our office and available. We just couldn't put it in a format that was really readable to the town at this point in time. So.
The colors are nice.
And then as far as the road goes, I wanted to understand that, or make clear for the public and for myself, I guess, too, that my understanding is that that's a County Road 6, correct? And it connects to obviously the state road, the Highway 550, and then it connects to the town road on 15th Street. So it's a county road that doesn't connect to any other county road.
That is my understanding of it.
Okay, thanks.
Just out of curiosity, I'm looking at this property ownership map. Who owns the statue of the shrine itself?
Oh yeah,
It looks like
too.
it might be like parceled up into different parcels, but I can't really tell. And I was wondering if that was owned by maybe the Catholic Church or if that was owned by the town of Silverton.
I believe it's owned by the town.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't quote.
Except below it's owned by the town. But Willie had, all of the fireworks things. They're on private property without permission.
Oh, boy. Just curious.
It's always complicated.
So that
then
magenta color is owned by the town of Silverton. And then the yellowish, I can look up for you.
Got me. I was on mute talking to myself, but yeah, we could pull up who owns those, but those two catty corner parcels are owned by the same group. And I don't know exactly where the shrine is up here.
Yeah.
But
And how is the triangular property that's, yep, where the arrow is? How is that?
Yeah.
How is that categorized? I know
Sure.
I saw that it's not, I mean, yeah, can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, and so it's a little bit, I've never actually seen this in county data, but it's basically called, Lucy, thank you for your research on that, confirm that this is BLM property.
Yeah, okay.
It categorizes it as the same as right of way. And just to, we didn't make this straight line for any other reason other than, well, there's no real reason to do
Yeah,
it
have it
different. So I
go.
just connected 2 points, but yeah, it's
But there are
all
two private
yellow.
property owners in the corner there.
Correct. Yep.
And that's in the county.
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah, again, the San Juan County Assessor's website is very user friendly, and the gold yellow around the shrine is the Catholic Church and the pink is the town.
Perfect.
All right, any other questions? All right. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Katie. Your work on
Thank
that.
you.
So thanks everyone. And if you see things in there, questions, feel free to send them our way. We'll make the edit. It's a working document. We want it to be as helpful as possible. So thanks.
Yeah, and we will clarify for anybody who caught it, firm maps are May 9th, not March. So we wrote March in there and apologize. Your firm maps are being established, the revised ones for floodplains on May 9th is that actual date. So we'll adjust that date. And also just to echo what TJ said earlier, but Gloria, John, and Lucy especially gave a lot of time and attention and help to us, especially getting a lot of the background data and water and sanitation lines and things like that. So a lot of props to them to just providing us a lot of support in helping us brainstorm questions that we had. So.
Do we have plans, like, will this go on the website beyond it being available publicly in our packet? Will we put it somewhere online?
They can watch this video online, can't they?
Yeah, watch all of it.
Yeah,
It's available.
it's more of a reference document, especially for staff and stuff. So, I mean, but all our documents are available if anyone asks. So,
Mhm. For discussion purposes only. States.
yeah.
Okay, well, how about we take a 5-minute break then between now and our next item on the agenda and just reconvene at 6:30, little after 6:33. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. And then all of our online attendees, we are going to be going straight into an executive session. So we're going to be asking you to leave the meeting and then we'll lock it. So at that time, if you guys would like to leave the meeting now, that would be great. If not, we have to close the whole meeting down and open it again. But you can use the same link to access our regular meeting at 7 o'clock after our executive session. Thanks, everyone.
Nice. They're really listening. Good job.
You lock the meeting now. Make it easy. Thank you.
All right, is everyone back in the room and ready, or? I
Not
see,
quite, I'll go grab them. John. Actually, I think. Seven. Evan coming back? I don't know if he was.
He left his wallet's there.
Okay.
Yeah, he was making coffee or something. Is he? Oh, boy.
I think we're okay to start, Sally.
yeah, okay, at least we can get into the executive session.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
I will now, yeah.
can we unlock it real quick so Jeff can join?
Oh.
Okay.
What does Jordan's icon say?
Oh, that's smart.
All we have is each other.
Oh, I love it.
Mhm. All right,
Well, all
Okay,
we have
there's
is
Jeff.
that's enough.
Is
now I can.
that enough to get us into executive session?
Everyone else go away.
All right, we have everything.
Okay, so now, and we're locked, great. So. Sorry. Okay, I will now entertain a motion to go into executive session. Oh,
I'll
Do I
make a
need to
motion to go
continue?
into executive session.
yeah, okay, great. Thanks, that's Jeff. And a second,
Where did
Second.
go?
Who?
Clayton.
Oh, Clayton disappeared.
oh no.
It was we just left Clayton. Yeah,
It's just there.
I know, he was just there.
The ghost is turning this power.
Just a reminder while you're waiting for Clayton, your YouTube is still recording live. So to make sure you disconnect that when you enter into the executive session.
Yeah, we cut that after the vote.
Okay.
That way the vote's recorded.
Thank
Okay,
you,
there's-
Katie.
There you go.
Okay,
There's Clayton. Okay, so now let's lock, yep. Locked and loaded. All right, let's just, we'll start again. I'll now entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Okay, that's Jeff and Jim. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis,
Here,
Trustee Baker,
yep,
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Bierman,
Here.
Trustee George,
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 yeas, 1 absent. Let me go
Okay.
ahead and cut our-
So I just realized